Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunday here at the Music City Multicon 2022. My name is Whitney Roberts. I'm the co-host of the Broken Token Classic Gaming Podcast. And here to my immediate left, I'm honored and privileged to be able to spend the next hour with Mr. Garry Kitchen, Mr. David Crane, and Mr. Dan Kitchen. And this is the third of what we consider kind of a three-part installment. On Friday, we spent an hour plus, almost 2 hours. It was a really good discussion around the Atari and the Activision years. And if you didn't get to make that panel discussion, no worries. We're going to have it on YouTube, and the description to that will be the link to that will be in the description below the video. We'll also have it on our podcast feed as well. Yesterday, we spent right at an hour and a half talking about the post-Activision and the absolute entertainment years. That was very enlightening as well. And this morning, that kind of brings this story, I guess, if you could call it, full circle. And we're going to be talking about their newest endeavor, Audacity Games. But before we get into that, gentlemen, would you all mind to do a quick intro, please?
Hi, I'm Garry Kitchen of Audacity Games, long history in the industry, dating back to 1979, along with these two gentlemen, and we were early designers on the Atari 2600, game designers, and have currently had the audacity to start a game company that actually makes Atari 2600 cartridges.
Did that feed into the name somehow?
It was, absolutely.
Fantastic. Oh, that's awesome.
No doubt.
Okay.
David Crane, co-founder of Activision, best known for Pitfall. I mean, I've published almost 100 games, and I'm still Mr. Pitfall to just about everybody, but that's okay. I also worked at Atari in 1977 with Nolan Bushnell, so I go way back. And, we've been coming to these shows for all these years. We love supporting the retro gaming movement. Everybody likes to remind us that the good old days and those games were more fun than what you can buy today.
Amen to that.
And that kind of led into the creation of Audacity Games as well.
Thank you.
Dan Kitchen, Activision game designer from the early 1980s. I've worked with these gentlemen most of my life and have been making games for the last 40 years, and very happy to be creating games for the system that we started on that we very much know and love.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So real quick, I've got a box copy here of Circus Convoy. And before we get into some questions specifically on the game itself, I'd really appreciate if we could spend at least the first part of this and just talk about the time period between the end of Absolute and what brought you all to Audacity Games, because that's a good, as far as the 2600 library is concerned, that's a good, 35 years, I guess, in time. And so what brought Audacity to the table now?
Well, it was shows like this and the growth in homebrew over time. You'd hear about homebrew games, and we would talk to people at shows, say, wow, did you see there was a homebrew game? Somebody did Halo. Somebody did an original version of something else. And then people started saying to us when they met us at the shows, do you guys ever thinking of doing a game on the 2600? And we would chuckle. But we heard it a lot, and we heard it more often. And we started to hear from people, really, it wasn't just the game. What they missed the whole 1980s experience of the game, the beautiful box, 4-color art, the manual, the patches, all of it together, the whole experience together, something they could hold in their hand, a retail product. And we knew we didn't want to just put out a binary and have it go all over the internet. So we always said if we were going to do something, we were going to do it and recreate early Activision in the 2600 world. And we didn't take it seriously until 4 years ago. And we'd come back from the shows and talk about it. But I actually stumbled on a website called 8-Bit Workshop. 8bitworkshop.com, and an enterprising guy had made an in-the-browser 2600 development environment where the left side of the screen is an editor where you can type 6502 code, and the right side of the screen is an actual 2600 screen, and everything you typed on the left automatically instantly assembled and appeared on the right. And it was sample code and stuff. So I sent it to Dave, and we chuckled and said, that's really funny. We could just start writing something. And we just became intrigued by it. And then Dave, but this was nothing happened at fast speed. I mean, this was something,
So this is taking place. This is a very it's a very organic process that's taking time.
Yeah, and Dave's brain started thinking. He started saying, well, even if we wrote code, there's so many other things we would need.
Yeah.
And I'll let him take over.
Well, I mean, yeah, I once snapped at John Hardy, the head of the National Video Game Museum, when he said, you should do a game. And I said, do you know how much stuff we would have to do to make that happen?
A lot.
You don't just do a piece of art on Photoshop and be done, like they do now. So yeah, I finally had some time to start thinking about it. And Circus Convoy, it was technically about 3 years in development, but that's because we were building an entire publishing company at the same time.
Oh.
And everything that goes into being a publisher.
Well, and the first thing we had been saying, really for 25 years, is you can't do it. There's no plastic. I mean, those cartridges are plastic. They take a circuit board in them, and those don't exist anymore. There's no plastics company in China that has the mold. To make plastic, you've got to have a tool. The tool costs thousands of dollars to make. It's a custom piece of steel that you inject liquid into, and it turns into plastic. So our answer was always, there's no tool, there's no plastic. You can't make a cartridge.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because so many homebrew games that we see available right now, like if you go to the Atari Age store and buy the homebrews there, they're all repurposed combat cards or something like that. And I know
find old cartridges.
That's it. I know, because I've sent Al at Atari Age boxes of combat cards to help out, because that's the only way they can republish. They can put out new games on cartridges, at least right now.
And for whatever reason, we didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I understand.
We were like, no, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it the right way. We're not going to ship people games in old, used cartridges.
Yes.
Yeah, so you just start making a list of all those things that you need. You need graphic development tools. You need injection molded tool for plastic. You need die cut labels. So you have to find a guy who makes the labels and will die cut them to wrap around the cartridge. And manual. We need artists to do the manual box, the boxes and the manuals, and write the manuals, all these things that had to be done.
PC board
that goes into the thing. And we started to think about some unique technology that we might use. One example is these games, we didn't have this terminology when we started, but these games are basically NFTs. They are unique. Each one has its own serial number built into the ROM, and it matches a serial number that's printed on the outside of the collector edition, for example. And when you buy this, you register at Audacity Games, and you own that copy, that specific serial number. So if you're going to do that, well, why don't we just also have a high scoreboard? And how do we do that with an Atari 2600? So I developed QR code technology that would let you submit your game with your smartphone by looking at the TV screen. And anyway, all of these technologies had to be developed. There's an RFID in every cartridge, so that in the manufacturing process, it can keep track of which serial number goes into which box and goes to who, which purchaser, and everybody gets the right everything.
And if you're a collector, if you have serial number 10, which is pretty valuable because it's really low.
Yeah.
If you wanted to prove you have serial number 10, you didn't just jury rig up a label. We can actually scan it and see that it's number 10 because of the RFID.
We have a secret file that shows what RFID goes to what serial number.
And the National Video Game Museum in Texas can also do that. So if you wanted to sell number 10, to this gentleman here, you could facilitate that because we know number 10 because we can recognize the RFID, and in the database it'll change, and now you'll have it.
There's even a process on the website to make that change and mail a code to someone who then absorbs it, puts it into his account, and all that.
So in technical terms, we went nuts. That's really what happened.
Yeah. So you had to build everything to support the business model that you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously we did it so that we're going to sell more than one 2600 cartridge.
Yes. Oh yeah. We're looking forward to the next for sure.
So there will be another one someday.
Yeah.
But we also did that while having day jobs. I mean, you asked the question about Absolute. The end of Absolute was
96.
95, 96, somewhere in there. And we haven't just been doing nothing since then.
Yeah.
Gary and I started a company treating the internet as a game console. The company's called Skyworks, and we did all sorts of online games, hundreds of them actually. Gary has run the Addicting Games company for Nickelodeon, MTV, Nickelodeon.
If you've been in the Addicting Games website, we were heavily involved in that for a couple of years. We took the Addicting Games brand. I was hired by Nickelodeon to come in to help them with a mobile game strategy. Because something they didn't mention is we did the internet games, but then a unique business model came along in 2008, 2009, when Steve Jobs announced the App Store. So we immediately got into the iPhone. We were on the iPhone 3 months after the App Store opened and had a run of 2 or 3 years where we did really well on the iPhone, had 6 games that went to number 1 in the App Store. And what was interesting was no one knew who we were. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, it's a David Crane game. I mean, just making good games. Same thing with all our online games, just making good games. We didn't leverage our backgrounds.
Yeah.
But then we moved over to Nickelodeon. We created a mobile version of the Nickelodeon Addicting Games website, which was the number 1 gaming site in America, 25 million people a month, and launched that within 72 hours. It went to number 1 in the App Store. So that was a huge project for a while. And then eventually, like all companies, Viacom sold their gaming business, including Addicting Games. And then we started thinking about Audacity.
So thinking about Audacity, and David, you mentioned that Circus Convoy here is three years plus in the making. Can you talk a bit about the idea behind the game? Because if I remember kind of how things transpired a bit, Circus Convoy dropped a week after or so-ish, a week after the announcement of the company being in existence. And Dan, we were I and a lot of other Atari 2600 fans were tracking what you were working on for the successor, or I guess the sequel to Keystone Capers. And I would love to hear how the three of you kind of came together, because Dan, I understand you're still working on your game, and then we got Circus Convoy dropped just like boom. So can you all kind of describe the timing on all of that and how that worked out?
Yeah, the confusion was that a lot of that work was going on in the background.
Okay.
Even before Dan started talking about his game. So it looks like Circus Convoy took a very small amount of time and Casey's Gold is taking forever. But in fact, Circus Convoy was going on in the background for a couple of years before anybody even knew that Dan was talking about another game.
Okay.
And Dan was doing his independently from us. And then we had a discussion with him and said, look at all the things we had to do.
Yeah.
Plastics. And that we even developed, by the way, a custom EEPROM system, which is a programmer that we had to make from scratch, hardware, to program EEPROMs to go into the cartridges because they had to be serial numbered. So it automatically increments and goes to the next cartridge when
as you're producing the cartridges. Yeah.
Producing cartridges.
Yeah.
So he looked at that and said, yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm going to have to partner with someone who has this tech. So part of the delay in Casey's Gold is that he was not working with that technology initially, and he had done a lot of base work without that technology. So he has had to take the work he did before and adapt it to our system, which involves a lot internally in the game.
I see.
Dan, you can talk about that.
Right. So when Garry had showed me that 8-Bit Workshop website, he had already been playing with it with Dave, and I started tinkering with it. And I remembered I had a cartridge a concept that I prototyped back at Activision, which I had at that time hoped to be a sequel to Garry's hit Keystone Capers. And I wanted to use his little cop character and put him on a train in the middle of the desert. And I made this little prototype cartridge and put it away. And at the crash of 1983, Activision shifted us off to 2600, and I lost the cartridge into history. And when Garry showed me this, I thought, let me see if I can go back and recreate what I remember in my mind from 32 years ago, what it looked like. And so I started tinkering, and I started making this display, and it started to look very nice, and the tool is very powerful. And at one point, pretty far into the process, my wife was cleaning out my offsite storage with me, going through boxes, and she pulled out this little red cartridge and looked at it and said, "What's this?" And I said, "Oh my God, that's the prototype cartridge from 32 years ago." And so...
Did you know what game it was?
I knew it. I recognized the label.
Okay.
It said Keystone Cannonball.
Keystone Cannonball.
And
that's a good name. That's
I plugged it in.
Yeah.
And up it came, and I said, "Oh my God," and I compared it to what I was doing. And what I was doing on this 8-Bit Workshop was far better. And I realized, I guess I had a number of Atari games between that prototype and this that I had done in my career. So I guess I got better at it. Mm-hmm. But I shared that with Garry and Dave, and I pretty much prematurely announced I was working on it, hoping to have had it released a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And as Dave and Garry said, work gets in the way.
Yeah.
After the work at Absolute, I went off and had a CD-ROM company for 5 years and worked with GT Interactive. I did a game based on Casper, the film, the Universal film. I did a game with Christy Yamaguchi, the Olympic ice skater, where back then children's CD-ROMs were popular, so you could create Christy's ice skating routine. Thank you, in 3D, and it was one of the first games in the world that had motion capture. And I worked with a studio in New York that was just getting into mocap at the time, and we put her in an arena in San Jose and motion capped her. And so you could create for your parents a Christy Yamaguchi ice skating routine where you could pick the music and pick the background and pick the lighting and pick what she does. And that was very popular, distributed by GT Interactive. And then I went off to a company called Majesco Entertainment. They were a remanufacturer of Nintendo games at that time, and they brought me on board to get them into the publishing business. And I helped get them started into the original Game Boy, and then the Color Game Boy, and then the Game Boy Advanced, and the new GBA, and then the DS, and then we branched out into PS1, PS2. So while these guys were working on the internet, I helped Majesco become a publisher and stayed there as their VP of product development licensing. I did a number of film games. I think if any of you know the movie Grandma's Boy, that was a Happy Madison, Adam Sandler movie. I was the technical director. I helped produce the 3 games in the film. I helped decorate the sets with how it would look like a video game testing facility or publisher. So I did a lot of cool things then, and then Garry had shared with me that 8-Bit website.
Drug you right back in.
And and it's amazing. I thought I knew the machine, and after playing with it, I couldn't remember. How do we put an object on the screen? How do we do this? How do we do that? And I kind of had to reteach myself how to code. And I had announced the game, and life got in the way, and other projects. And so unfortunately, the game isn't yet done, but now we are all collectively working on it and making it up to the quality of Circus Convoy, which I hope to come close to. These guys are amazing what they've created. And so when they met with me and said, we have the technology and you're going to need plastic and all these things, it really made sense to join forces. And so while they created Circus Convoy, I helped orchestrate the marketing, the box printing,
Okay,
the
gotcha.
manual,
Yeah.
and the other marketing support that we needed as a company.
Yeah. Equally as important work in order to get the finished product
Yeah,
out.
but
It all has to be done.
As
Yeah.
Dave said, you may have a game, but you still need a box and manuals.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't realize, particularly just players. You think of the game gets programmed. And yeah, even people in the business working for a publisher, that's all they do is they program the game, then they hand it off to somebody. When you're creating a startup, as I did with Activision, and again with Audacity, you see all the things that have to be done to make this thing happen. And Dan publicized Casey's Gold with a previous name because he was looking at doing a Kickstarter to develop the
Yep, I
the
remember
cartridge
that.
and the plastic and
Yep.
all that kind of stuff. And that's when we got together. And we worked together at Activision, we worked together at Absolute, and went separate ways for a while, and even Skyworks for a while. But then there's no reason why we shouldn't work together since we're both doing 2600.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was the connection. Is even if you had a game, you couldn't publish it until we do all this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So let's work together to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking through the process of what you have to build to recreate a machine that existed 40 years ago, from development to production to marketing to delivery and all of that in between and everything in between. That's a really tall order. I mean, it's an extremely tall order. Is Audacity still just the three of you today, or have you added some folks on?
We have a fourth person, technical guy who helps us with production and helps us with fulfillment.
Okay.
And and game testing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we
good.
bring in part-time people when we're doing actual production.
Oh, okay, good. Now, one of the things that my mind immediately jumps to is a few of the names that we've discussed in the prior two sessions, like Steve Cartwright and some of the other Activision developers. Is there any opportunity for some of those, for some of the original guard to rejoin you guys to develop some games?
I'm laughing because I contacted Steve very early, and he said, "But that was so hard."
And so long
He's getting paid
ago.
to do something that's not so hard.
Yeah.
Why would he want to do this? And we have gotten that kind of response from a
Really,
number of people, right?
even from the folks that were at Activision.
Well,
Wow. Okay.
The only thing we'll say is we do have a signed contract with someone else
Fantastic.
who is
That's
a
great.
name designer. We will say that.
Yeah. Fair
And
enough.
I keep talking to Steve, so he may come back. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah,
But
and we've had a lot of discussions with other people whose names you know.
Yeah.
And it's the same problem we had. Well, I've got a day job, and
Yeah.
God, I can't imagine learning that language again. And,
Yeah.
but we're trying to tell them, look, we've done all the hard work. So now just write the game.
Just help us, yeah. So when you talk about doing all the hard work, and if let's just say if Steve were to come back, how does he build a game at Audacity? Because I take it you don't have the blue boxes anymore. I mean, did you have to build your own development environments and recreate everything to do Atari 2600 development on your own? How does that work?
The community has taken care of that over the last 30 years. I mean, Stella is a wonderful tool.
Okay.
It's an emulator. It has debugging capabilities. It's really, really good. So between 8-Bit Workshop is kind of like
it's an IDE.
yeah,
It's
it's
basically
yeah.
And it's kind of where I was
But
going.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
8-Bit Workshop doesn't have the sophistication of Stella. So between those tools, and Dave didn't mention, but Dave also wrote, you may mention it, a sophisticated graphic tool, because we had an idea in our heads of how we could take the graphics to a next level. But it's something that we used to do on paper, and to keep our heads from exploding, we said we really should create a tool to help us do that, which he did, and he gave it to me, and I'm mostly the art department.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I used that very technical tool to create things like the snake.
Yes.
Circus Convoy.
The giraffe. It looks.
The
Yeah,
giraffe.
very complex.
Yeah.
So looking.
Yeah, things that are really complex that don't look like they could be done on the 2600. And so there was a lot of tool development. that
Okay.
we did.
Okay.
But development system, Stella.
Okay. No, I mean that's very
Your
fair.
workshop. I mean that stuff.
Yeah, no, it's very
Now,
fair.
that said, there's a lot of technology that goes into an Audacity game, including the QR code. The QR code is something you can do today in JavaScript just using third-party stuff that's available for free. But I challenge anyone to do that on a 6502 microprocessor in 8 bits at 1 megahertz.
The problem is RAM.
With
And RAM.
128 bytes of RAM.
128 bytes of RAM. The QR code may be the hardest thing that Dave ever programmed on 2600.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
He kept calling me up.
Without
and
a doubt.
Why are we doing this? This is ridiculous. You didn't do it on this machine. And then eventually,
Eventually it
he
happens.
told me it was done.
It requires a 22-term polynomial divide done in an 8-bit processor.
And that's not anything you want to be doing in a 6502.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, even just saying it sounds complex.
Yeah,
Yeah, it would make
bad.
would make your head explode.
My point was we have all that technology in what's in essence a base program that if Steve Cartwright came in, I would hand him the base program, tell him how it works. It handles all kinds of screen generation and switching between title screens and QR codes, and all of that sort of stuff is all automatic now.
And the custom bank switching technology.
Yeah, but it also has things like it has in the base program, it has the inventory system that's used in Circus Convoy if you wanted to do another game like that.
Okay.
It keeps track of a lot of cool stuff.
Okay, so you all have developed what is essentially very valuable intellectual property IP to allow you to publish not only Circus Convoy but everything that comes after Circus Convoy as well. And I can say from my time playing Circus Convoy, I mean it's a beautiful cartridge. It's so clean and crisp. It feels good in the hand because it's all just new. But I will say that the game plays and looks unlike any other 2600 game I've ever played. Maybe save Pitfall 2 from a complexity and sophistication standpoint. Is there any use of the display processor chip, the DPC chip, in Circus Convoy, or are you? No,
Not a thing.
Are you planning on doing any hardware assist
No.
later on? No. Okay. All right.
If we can do that, we can do anything. That's the way to do it.
We are
We
writing that.
decided we didn't want to have a crutch.
Okay.
Yeah.
The crutch being, well, let's put fancy processing in there. We want to be judged on the same level playing field of the basic hardware
Okay.
of
That's
the day.
that's
we are
very
writing
fair.
that as if it's 1982.
And the only caveat is
Yeah.
that you can't buy an 8K ROM anymore.
Right, so we had to
They don't
figure
exist.
out-
Yeah.
Okay.
The smallest one you can buy is the one we bought, and that's 128K.
Okay.
So, and the only reason we did it that way is the last thing we wanted to do is have ROM limit stop us doing something creatively. In the past, that's what we had to do. When we ran out of ROM, we were done.
The game was finished.
The game was finished.
The game
No
was
matter what
finished.
you wanted to put in it,
Yeah.
the game was now
Yeah.
finished.
You know,
and,
it's Garry-
and it was a product of its time because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Gary mentioned yesterday, I think, or the day before, I mean, he would have put in more screens in Donkey Kong 2600 had he had another 4K.
More ROM.
Yeah.
So now we essentially have enough ROM to do whatever we need to do
But
creatively.
otherwise, you can stack this up against a game from 1982, and there's no other technology about it. And in fact, in 1982, if you wanted to, you could have put more ROM in.
Yeah.
We had that ability.
Yeah, it's just price.
It was. Yeah. Yeah.
So I patterned that cartridge after the Activision plastic, which I was involved in the creation of way back when.
Yeah.
We had a designer to do it, but I was consulting with him.
Yeah.
And so it's very similar. And I'm the Renaissance man. I can do plumbing, electrical. I mean, I do everything.
And cartridges.
And cartridges.
And
Yes.
so I said, all right, I'm just now going to.
We called Roto-Rooter. They couldn't do the cartridges.
I'm just going to do a tool.
And we changed the glue.
That's right.
We changed the glue.
So it doesn't look like junk 20 years
Yeah.
ago.
It doesn't have the Active
Plaque.
Plaque. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, in 2050, your cartridges will still look
They'll,
new.
they'll still be brand new.
Remember
and
that. We may
shiny as
not be
anything.
here, but the cartridge will be here.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Well, for everything that was developed from a tooling perspective, from a production perspective, it certainly worked out well for Circus Convoy. Can you all speak? I mean, label here says by David Crane and Garry Kitchen. So Gary, you said that you did a lot of the art production on it. David, I assume this was it your idea, or was it collectively between the two of you, or how did that go?
Design.
Okay.
Dave wrote all the code. It was
Okay.
a joint design, and then I did the art.
Okay, gotcha. So it's an interesting game in the way that it fools you into thinking that the game scrolls, and
Right.
it has a sense of movement to it that I've not seen on other 2600 games. Can you talk a bit about how you achieve that? Because it does have the side-to-side scrolling like we see in Pitfall 2, and in other games as well. But while you're playing it, you feel like the entire screen has motion instead of just being static. I thought that was just a very interesting gameplay mechanic.
Well, it's not scrolling, it's screen to screen. There is
Yeah.
differentiation that we have to make, although a lot of people mix the two terms.
Yes.
But as soon as you turn it on, you'll see that you're actually moving on a train.
Uh-huh.
And we pull that off with a lot
Not a
of...
train on a.
on a-
You're thinking of the other games.
Yeah.
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 A boxcar, I guess.
Box.
Yeah.
On an 18-wheeler.
Yeah, there you go.
18-wheeler trailer, yeah. And since we didn't have to limit ROM, we could say, okay, here's an idea that I would never do in a 4K game, but the main character has many, many frames of pictures so that he can have his scarf flapping in the breeze.
And it does. And
A couple of pixels, but-
it is, but the entire time it looks like there's motion with him.
Yes.
All the time.
And if you're facing into the wind, it flaps harder than if you're facing away from the wind. And there's a lot of extra images you have to put in there just to get those couple bits to do that.
Yeah.
We were able to do those kinds of things. I created a set of displays along the top that normally have birds flying by. Mm-hmm. Well, I did that so that there could be an aerial device, and you'll find out later in the game that you can launch a drone and ride it to other places. And we did, put in teleporting so that you could do this, and all these games have always evolved over time. You think of a cool idea and you put it in, and you have a basic idea.
Yeah.
We got feedback from some of the guys like at the National Video Game Museum who said, I don't really like just plain old adventure games. I like those action games where you had a single screen and you did all this fun stuff. So we said, well, let's give something for everyone, and you unlock mini games. And each one of those mini games could be a standalone 4K game, from 1982. Mm-hmm. And there's, 6 or 7 of them. I don't remember how many. So you have adventure, you have discovery, you have learning how to do this, you have pick up these things, and you need this key to go over there and do that. And so there's that kind of adventure game. And when you get into these mini games, you actually get to play real Atari 2600 like single screen action games.
Yeah.
So the intention was to give everybody something. And if they don't like this type better than that, or they like this type better than that, they get to play them both.
Yeah.
One thing on the motion
Yeah.
is it is screen to screen to screen, but at one point it's a convoy, but they're made up of groups of trucks, and there are gaps, and we came up to a point where we said, what we really want is we want the truck from the previous convoy to drive closer to the other
Yes.
back of the next part of the
Yeah.
convoy.
And you see that happen.
And you see, and we said, yeah, but it's a screen-to-screen game. We're not actually really scrolling stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dave said, well, I could try to make the truck scroll. So, to a technical person, is this an amazing moment where the truck drives forward to reach the back of the other truck, and most game players, it'll just gloss right over.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to 2600 programmers, they'll be like, what the hell just happened?
It happened. Yes.
Yeah, because you don't expect it on
Yeah.
on a screen-to-screen game.
Yeah, and that's really one of the reasons why I asked about the DPC, and of course I know that did a lot of sound work for Pitfall 2, but it seems like the homebrew community today is really I would say, supported by this whole process of having ARM CPUs inside the cartridges to expand the capability of the games. They're in some wonderful, wonderful arcade ports have landed on the 2600 because of that capability.
Yes, right.
But then when I saw how the motion is inside Circus Convoy, it immediately made me think, it's like, man, I wonder, is that live or is that Memorex? How are they accomplishing that if they don't have any assist? So that was really the reason for the question.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, this may be personal arrogance, but it doesn't make any sense for me to do a port of an arcade game using extra hardware and do it on the 2600. Why do it on the 2600? You can do it on a PC. You could do it on anything. The 2600 is a beautiful machine all by itself. And so that we use only the 2600's capabilities.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really impressive. So I'll say that there's the work shows for the time invested and for what you all have built. It's really, really impressive.
If I can, let me I want to talk a little bit about the business model and how we launched.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
We had some people that were diehard collecting. Collecting was everything for them. So we made what was called a VIP edition. It was, how much of it? $149? $129?
I don't remember.
It was around between $129 and $149. And you got literally, you really got the kitchen sink with it. Mm-hmm. You got a truck, a Circus Convoy truck, custom made, limited to 100, with the Circus Convoy on an 18-wheeler, the logo.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other things like that. I think we got a belt buckle. Mm-hmm. That's the logo.
You got a trucker hat.
Trucker hat.
Yeah. And then you got the game with a signed certificate of authenticity, and you got a very low serial number, under 100 serial number.
Yes.
And we only had, that was limited to 100 pieces. And we sold those out like instantly.
Yeah, mine is number 66.
All right,
very nice.
Yeah, and I had to fight for it.
The National Video Game Museum has which one?
9.
They have number 9.
Number 9. Yeah.
So
number 4.
Number 4? Oh, that's right. After 1, 2, 3, and then they have number 4.
Okay. All right. Good deal.
So then that was the highest one. That was limited to 100. We sold those out right away.
Yeah.
And I wrote the website for this thing, and I was doing it, and for the serious collector, and you know who you are.
Yeah. I've raised my hand right here.
And we honestly should have done 200 units because the demand on that was ridiculous.
Yes.
So then we did the middle one, which is the collector edition. Mm-hmm. Collector edition is $99, and that you don't get all the truck and the belt buckle and all that.
Because there are only 100 of those.
Yeah,
there's only 100 of those trucks.
There's
only 100 of those belt buckles.
Those are gone, never to be seen again.
Yeah.
So in the collector edition, you do get the certificate of authenticity signed by us that's frameable, and you get the game. And most importantly, you get something we really didn't want to do, but the demand was so high. You get a serialized binary so that you can run it on Stella or run it on another machine or run it on Retron with a SIM card.
Yeah.
And people really wanted that digital piece, so we put that in the collector's edition, which is sold for $99. Mm-hmm. And then finally we have the one you have there, the green one.
Yeah.
It's standard edition, $60. You get no binary file, you get no signatures or authenticity certificate. Mm-hmm. It's still a serial number, but it's a high serial number. It's 2,000 over.
And remember, when you bought Pitfall 2 in 1984 for $39.95, adjusted for inflation, that would be $120.
Yeah.
This is half the price of what you would have paid for Pitfall.
So they are a little expensive, we admit, but so much went into them, and it's such a limited market that we felt that people who were serious would be willing to pay that.
Oh, yes.
Now, just to finish that thought, we did bring a limited number of collector edition cartridges, which we have here. And because it's not our primary reason to be here, obviously, but we brought them because we always have people calling, well, do you have the game here? And because we're at a show and we don't have to ship it and there's no tax, collector's edition is only $80 at the show.
Okay.
So if you don't have yours yet and you want one, we have
a few left, if you want one after this, stop by where we're sitting and we do have them.
Oh, that's fantastic. So,
Unfortunately, we have no VIPs left.
yeah, they were vaporized within
They were
minutes.
vaporized the first day.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. Is it the plan to carry that model forward, like Dan, with your game? Are there going to be 3 levels? And,
Absolutely.
And with every game to come from
Yeah,
Audacity?
it's kind of fun to think about what are the premium tchotchkes.
Oh, yes.
Put in with
Yes.
In fact, we've already ordered one premium tchotchke for Dan's game, which
Okay.
we can't discuss. But
Yeah, yes.
We already have one of the collectors for the VIP edition ready to go.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
People are really enthusiastic about that.
It matters because at least from my standpoint, it makes you feel like you've invested in,
Yes.
and you're helping the company to be successful. Because
Yep.
speaking for myself, I want to see you all do game number 3. I know game number 2 is coming. I want to see 3, 4, and 5, and I figured the only way to do that is we have to support you all. Otherwise, it's not really worth your time. And time's the most precious commodity you have.
It's not actually worth our time anyway, but it's a lot of fun.
Fair enough.
It is a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, good.
It's a lot of fun for us. And
We love to hear that.
And we haven't made a dime yet in profit. We don't expect to ever make profit. But if we can at least cover the costs and come close,
Yeah.
it's good enough.
Then it's
Because
good
we like
enough.
doing it. It's fun.
Yeah.
No, there's no announcement about a new game. Let's just get that out there.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But let's at least say that David has a game in development. I have seen it. I have played some of it.
Oh, fantastic.
And it is in development.
Okay.
Like nothing you've ever seen
Like nothing
before.
I've ever seen.
Oh,
I
wow.
actually have a game in development
Awesome. Yeah.
that I can bring up a joystick and play as a proof of concept for an idea unlike that and unlike the one Dave's working on.
Yeah.
It's unlike anything like those. But I had this idea, and I really like what I have so far, but it's a way to go.
Yeah.
And there is another game in development beyond those two.
Okay.
By someone who's not sitting up on this stage.
Okay. Well, everybody heard it here first.
And
That's
then
awesome.
You know that we talked about Dan's game. It's coming. It's going to be there. Just wait till it's just right.
Yeah, no, I understand. So Dan, we're all of us are anxiously looking forward to your game. I will say that without a doubt, because
As I am too.
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
Why are
I'm
you
sure.
still sitting here? Go back and work.
Yeah, I got to go program. I'm sorry.
So Dan, can you talk to us a little bit about how that game has changed? Did it change after you saw what your brother and David were working on? Because to me, they look somewhat similar from a platforming perspective.
Yeah,
but
can I just address that?
yeah, sure, yeah.
That is just, it's a DNA issue. Is all it is.
Oh, that's funny.
Because I told Dan, we had been working on Circus Convoy before.
Okay.
And I told Dan about 8-Bit Workshop, and then he came up with this idea to resurrect Keystone Cannonball. And when he showed us what he had prototyped on Keystone Cannonball on 8-Bit Workshop, and we looked at what we were doing,
Yeah.
we all just kind of laughed.
Yeah. Because it's like, how does this happen?
Shared DNA, how does
Yeah.
this happen?
Yeah.
And the trucks look a lot like, there's a lot of people say, well, what'd you do, take the same engine and just whip up another game? No, it was independent on 2 different coasts.
Yeah, that's wild.
But there it is.
Yeah.
There is certainly some similarity.
Yeah.
But we've been careful, as Dan will tell you, to not keep them, to not make a duplicate.
Okay.
There's a lot of differences.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
first of all, there is no engine. Every game on the 2600 is its own unique code.
Yeah.
So we had no engine, but as Gary said, through DNA, I working
Just
completely in a
Yeah,
vacuum,
that's
independently,
wild.
not even seeing what they did. I went off and wanted to recreate what I had started to play with in 1983.
Well, and you might
Yeah.
say the same thing about Pitfall and Keystone Capers.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
go back even to that time. So, that it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a horizontal machine. When you have a little character, he wants to move
Yeah.
horizontally from screen to screen.
Yeah.
The game was initially worked on to be, the spiritual resurrection of that game. I obviously didn't own the rights to Keystone or Canon or the original name or anything from Activision, so I actually took that concept and made it different than my original themed game from 1983, and I called it Gold Rush. And when we started working together, we looked and made sense to kind of change the name. There were some copyright issues with that name, which has been used in the past.
Trademark issues. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so we have worked to make the game much less visually like Circus Convoy, and in fact, it plays as a completely different type of game.
Yes. Yeah.
Theirs is really an adventure.
It doesn't have the same model of
and
Circus Convoy of a deep puzzler.
Right. Mine's not a puzzler. You'll
More of
pick
an
it up.
action.
It's an action game.
More of an action game. Okay.
And
got
you'll
it.
get the feeling immediately. The only thing that's similar is there's something on the bottom that you're running on, and there's a sky in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that,
Not that there were ever any other Activision games that had sky.
right, that had rainbows and skies, and
Yeah.
mountains.
All new.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, again, I know that the public's really looking forward to it because Dan, it seemed like you had generated a fairly good groundswell of interest in your game.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it, and I know that I had 3 or 4 other friends that we were all talking about your game. Just amongst ourselves and just kind of saying, okay, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, whatever it is. And it seemed like you had the interest of the public behind you as far as what you were doing.
I did a lot of talk of marketing of the game before it came out. In hindsight, too much before it came out because life gets in the way, and then working with Audacity to help support Circus Convoy. But fortunately, now we're full blown on making sure this game and is done. And as you asked, when I had a version of the game that I let Garry and Dave play, and when I stepped back and looked at it, yes, by seeing what they did in Circus Convoy, made me go back and rethink. Wow. I see what they've done, and so I want to be a little less 1982-ish.
Victims of our own success. We raised the bar a little too high.
Yeah.
So we don't want to come in under that law.
Yeah, I don't want to do a 1982 game. I mean, they use 1982 hardware,
right?
But they've done amazing things, bringing the 2600 up to a level that is astounding.
Yeah.
So I stepped back and want to put that quality of depth in a different way in my game.
Okay.
And have it not just look like, oh, that could have been an 8K cartridge in 1982.
Yeah.
So that has also taken some time to step back and seeing how high the bar was raised with Circus Convoy and rethink some of the things I was doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, that does make sense. I mean, speaking of that, though, I mean, have you all? I guess collectively, all 3 of you, have you gotten the response that you were hoping for from the community on Circus Convoy and with Audacity? Because I think that everybody was clamoring for you all to do a new game, and I certainly hope that they have because it's good.
It's been outstanding.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I mean, to a person who has reached out to us or posted on YouTube or written on a website, to a person, there's just been nothing but joy.
Good.
And that's great because that's why we did it.
Yeah.
Forget number of units or dollars, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, the community embraced it. We sold enough that it made it worthwhile to go through the trouble of making a plastic tool and 4-color box.
Got the tool paid for.
Yeah, we got the tool paid
Okay,
for.
well that's important.
But
yeah, that's
more
good.
importantly, so many people told us nice things. Like I remember opening Activision games on Christmas morning.
Yes.
Now I have the same feeling.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. That's great. So all we really wanted to accomplish was bring that joy from the 1980s to the present day.
Yeah, well, you did that. I mean, I was astounded, just on a personal level, I was astounded that it even happened, let alone it could happen again and again and again.
Yep.
That's just, I mean, that's just a bonus.
Yeah, and we really loved every minute of it, and it's a great honor to be able to deal with a community that is so enthusiastic about something that we did 50 years,
Yeah.
40 years ago.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Now, gentlemen, thank you all. I think we're at a good point. In the prior sessions, we've always ran a little bit over, and we didn't, I think, enough time for questions. So I want to correct that here today. Let's open it up. Does anybody have any questions for the guys? Okay, we'll start here, and then Cameron, you had your. We'll do you number 2 then. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
What do you find your market demographic is? Is it people like us, like over 40, who are enthusiasts, or do you find also younger people get in?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, there's the collector, and the collector is collecting because of the nostalgia of their youth. They remember fondly these games, right? We are still finding a lot of people who they couldn't get their kids to do it, but they're turning their grandchildren onto the Atari 2600, right? So there are some younger players playing it. But, it's a small group. I mean, it's people who come to these shows.
Yeah.
And, so I think the demographic is definitely older.
Yeah, it is. It's people who were exposed to it, either the people who were little kids when it came out, or even people who may have been playing the NES when they were little kids, but fondly remember that the industry started with the Atari, and they reach back a little bit. I am actually really bothered by the fact that the video game industry at large isn't more involved in preserving the old days. I mean, you got to have the respect of people like this guy who founded the third-party
100%, yes.
video game industry.
I couldn't get into E3 one year.
And
Well, you couldn't get into E3?
no, I mean, like if
You mean they turned you away? Or
5 times.
yeah,
Each time saying, send more information that explains how you're part of this industry.
right.
And
I've actually spoken to the IGDA and DICE and said, you know what you people need to do? You people need to understand, and I didn't do it in a mean way, that you have to respect where this industry started.
It's not just the here and
same
now.
way that Hollywood respects, Kirk Douglas for what he did. You've got to understand and respect that you didn't build this.
Yeah.
And you are now making tens of billions of dollars off it.
Yeah.
But look at where it started.
Yes.
And that is part of your legacy. Hollywood certainly sees it.
Oh, yeah.
But the game industry hasn't seen it yet. So we'll see if my yelling ever gets us anywhere. And I probably did all that yelling right after they turned him down.
No, that was a great question, though. Thank
It's a great
you.
question.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
Yeah, Cameron back there.
So you mentioned finding that red cartridge, in your storage, and you guys have also talked about how you have held on to numbers 1, 2, and 3, whatever you put out. It's like the same. On a personal level, how do you keep the stuff that you're making? Because obviously you made a lot of stuff over the course of 40 plus years. You can't keep it all, but how do you personally keep that stuff?
Oh, my wife says I can keep it all. Because when are you
I've
ever
kept a lot
going
of
to
it.
get rid of all that crap in the garage?
And I sent a container of that stuff to the National Video Game Museum because I just realized they will keep it in better condition than I can keep it. I had some of the stuff in a barn at one time. And I said,
Yeah, and I started doing that too. I mean, we're very close with those guys. And every time I see John Hardy, he says, Dave sent us. I mean, when he says a container, he's talking about like a container the size of a U-Haul truck. And they keep saying, when are you going to send stuff? And I just moved recently. So in the unpacking, I've started to shove stuff over to the side and say, this is going to the video game museum.
So our actual collections are not very big, in our homes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's good though that it goes out for public display because I think that helps to
And preservation.
in preservation.
It's going to get beat up and lost in my house.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think we've mentioned it a couple of times that the history, whether it be spoken or whether it be video history, especially since I think we were talking about this yesterday, where like a lot of the game code artifacts are lost, then at least there's the least we could have the halo effect around. We may not have the game code, but at least there's that ring around the product that is preserved. Yeah. Dan.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to find some listings of some of my original work that I'm donating to the museum. and have donated that cartridge as well.
You could have gone to jail for saving those at the time.
At the time, I didn't realize I had them because we weren't allowed to leave with code, but I didn't realize that I had a box full of some of the things from our old PDP-11 printer at Activision that I had, I guess, taken home and it's all my markings on it on how to do certain things. And, you know.
And Dan recently found in more cleaning, he called me up and he said, didn't you back in the day have a notebook? And I said, I always thought I don't recall it. And he said, well, I have it. So he found this notebook with graph paper, and it is all of the art for Keystone Capers and Donkey Kong, all hand-drawn.
Wow.
Color pictures of Mario climbing up the 8-bit.
The little ladders.
So that's going to go to the museum too, but I'm going to document it first.
We've been well trained. What John Hardy was talking to me about, when you find this kind of stuff, let me know.
Yeah.
And he said, let me just be very specific. If you used a tissue while developing Pitfall, I want it.
A funny story is we had seen John and his two guys, Sean and Joe, many times through the years at the classic gaming conventions. And I always told them I had this prototype I did in 1983, and it was a guy who was a Keystone Cop on a train. But I said this to them over and over every year, and about the 15th year, they kind of look at us and say, Dan, you're full of crap. We don't believe you. It doesn't exist. And funny thing is, when I found the cartridge, or my wife found the cartridge, John was in Long Island visiting with his stepfather, and I called him up and said, John, the cartridge is real, and I have it right here. And he drove over to my place the next day, and we plugged it in together and turned it on, and he was just amazed.
Yeah.
And he said, when can I have it?
And if you haven't been to the National Video Game Museum in Frisco, Texas, it is worth the trip. Fly into Dallas. It's only a half-hour ride. And as good as you think it may be, it exceeds all expectations.
It's better.
It is Disney World quality for video games.
You just walk in and you go, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's amazing. They have 100,000 things in the collection, and not all of them are displayed. It's not big enough, but they display plenty.
And they have interactive exhibits, and
Things
it's
you've never
just
seen.
amazing.
Yeah. One of the exhibits there that was most impressive to me was they actually had an old game store set up, like in a corner, where you with the glass counter, and they had all the box games on the wall, and you felt like you were in a Kmart back in 1982.
Well, they also had the at the point of the industry in 1983 where the bins were out front in front of that
correct,
with the $2 cartridges Garry talked about yesterday. And they have a beautifully recreated 1982 living room.
Yeah.
So you can sit there as if you were back in time and play with your television or your Atari in a living room with shag carpet and the TV guide and all the things we had when we lived in 1982.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is amazing, and they also have a complete Activision patch collection up on one of the walls, and that's something to see as well. Because Garry, you were talking about like the Hero patch on eBay yesterday, going for over $500. Some of those patches are practically unobtainable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I want to mention that when we created Audacity, we wanted to create the spiritual rebirth of what Activision was. And so if you notice, the cartridge label, the box, is really in the same vein as the original
art style,
Activision art style and Activision quality. And so one thing that we've resurrected is the patches. So if you play the game and you get your certain score and flash your iPhone or mobile device at the QR code, you will automatically tell us that you have won a patch, and we will mail you a Activision quality patch for Circus Convoy.
Really
just like we had mailed back at Activision throughout the career in the 1980s.
That is fantastic. And that offer on the patches, that's not a limited time item, is it? I mean, if somebody buys Circus Convoy a year from now, would they still be able to get a patch?
We'll send you a patch with a letter.
Fantastic.
And we'll be doing it for all the other games.
Just full disclosure, it's not free.
Right.
We
Right.
charge $2
Shipping
Shipping
and
and
handling
That's
to
fair.
mail you the patch.
That's very fair.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to get that out there.
Yeah, that's very fair. Are there multiple versions of
Yes,
the patch
there
for different score tiers?
Yes, there
oh,
are.
there
Yeah.
are. Okay, good.
There are two versions.
Okay.
There's a high score, then there's a perfect score.
Yes.
The perfect score.
Perfect score.
Okay, gotcha. Excellent. All right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Did the low video resolution of the Atari 2600 produce any challenges for generating the QR code?
As Gary mentioned, that was the hardest thing Dave ever did.
You mentioned like everything else but the video resolution. That was
The video resolution was not a problem. I used the second smallest QR code, only gave me 22 bytes that I could transmit. And the play field, if you look at the play field, like for combat, the cartridge, the tanks are driving around, that resolution gave me enough pixels to make that QR code.
It's unbelievable to see a QR code on an Atari 2600.
There is another QR code feature that we should mention, is at certain points in Circus Convoy, when you're trying to figure something out, if you stop your guy and just stand there and flip one of the difficulty switches.
I think it's
game
select.
select.
Actually,
Game
it's game
select.
select.
Game select.
Another
Okay.
QR code comes up. And what it is a very clever idea of it's an interactive manual tied to where you are in the game.
Oh, that's
So
brilliant.
you take a picture, a web page comes up in your phone that explains where you are. And
Oh,
gives you hints.
that's brilliant. Yeah,
that's also
that's
in there,
neat.
too.
Context-specific online game manual.
Yeah.
Right, we didn't even mention that, but that's a whole other effort that has to be done as the game is
Yeah,
complete.
I've not heard that mentioned before.
Yeah,
That's pretty brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So with producing a product, you have QA problems. Was there like a cartridge 77 didn't work out and it's a missing number, or you replaced it? Or something?
There have been a couple lost or damaged or whatever, so there are some numbers that are out of circulation. It wasn't anything to do with QA. We had a lot of volunteers who wanted to play test our games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had 10 or 15 people who were active in mostly in the retro game industry, either with the museum or elsewhere, who were playing.
All sworn to secrecy.
But no like dead RFID chip and that one.
No, not really. Those are pretty solid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's impressive to think that that's inside a 2600
really
cartridge. It's like the future has arrived and it looks really good. So that's neat. Any other questions? Yeah, Cameron.
Specifically about this game, the next one coming up, I mean, everything that you're doing with box art and putting it in a cartridge is all fantastic, but do you see another life for it popping up on like a download store for the Xbox and the PlayStation, or even like the Atari box that came out a few years back?
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the way this industry works, I don't own Pitfall. Activision owns Pitfall. And that's why you've seen these flashback cartridges that have Pitfall on them in all of our games. Well, now in this particular case, it's Audacity Games owns this IP. And so if 10 years from now somebody wants to put out a Flashback 29 that has Audacity Games in it, you'll find them in there.
We have had 2 discussions with people about building it in the hardware. Neither of those came to fruition. But yes, I could absolutely see these games show up in future emulated or not emulated flashback systems, or somebody publishes a list, a collection of 2600 games. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we don't want to do is we don't want to just put out a binary. Because number one, that takes away all the quality that we built into all the things that require more than a binary.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I'm sure, we will make a deal with the Ataris of the world or other people who are building in. Actually, we've already, I should mention that the Atari 50th anniversary product coming out from Digital Eclipse in November.
Yeah.
We were heavily involved in that.
Okay.
We talk about Audacity Games. We're interviewed and we talk about it. David
Okay.
and I. we did not include Circus Convoy in that, though we talked about it. But we work very closely with Digital Eclipse and with Microsoft buying Activision and getting a lot of IP. There's going to be more stuff down the road.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
What, Microsoft is going to exploit IP?
Microsoft is very excited about getting those Atari 2600 games IP, which is something that Activision has been less than excited about.
Yeah.
They've included them in a few Call of Duty.
Well, hopefully they see fit to allow them to live on, and
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
they live on in a way that that honors them
Yes.
and honors the past,
Yeah.
but still provides a path forward. So that would be absolutely wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you have any cartridges with you, any of the old carts, we're sitting and we're glad to sign them at no cost. Want to bring over a Pitfall or a Keystone Capers or Crackpots, bring it over. We'll be glad to autograph it
Fantastic.
while we're here.
Well, gentlemen, I will say this. I know we've spent several hours together now, but it's been fantastic. And I appreciate your all's time and taking us through your all's body of work. And I know there's, for everything that we talked about, there's 10 other things that we could not touch on. Time just doesn't allow for all of that. But thank you for educating all of us and providing so many years worth of entertainment. I don't know how often you all hear this, but I'll say you've made a difference for all of us, and you've made fun for all of us, and that's a legacy in and of itself. So I hope everybody treats that accordingly, because it would not, my childhood, and I'm sure so many other people's childhoods, it would not have been the same without the games that you all did. So
Wonderful.
thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.